Hello, everybody. Welcome to The Reason We Learn. I am going live today on the spur of the moment because my recording software is not functioning. I updated it yesterday, and for whatever reason, it's glitching on the camera recording, and I have some important information to bring to you. So I decided to just go live because I know that YouTube will record this for future viewing. So you can watch this on the replay in case you miss it live, and it will effectively be a recording. So that is how I'm going to go with this. And also because I wanted to give you a chance to ask questions as I go if anyone does tune in, because you might have some questions as I go through this. Now, we've been talking a lot on my channel and in general in our nation's discourse about critical race theory. You've heard about it, you've read about it in the news. There are arguments going back and forth about whether it's in the schools, not in the schools, what it even is. And I've tried to explain as best I can on this channel that critical race theory in and of itself is not what's being taught in the schools. It's a critical social justice lens or praxis or pedagogy that's being applied to lessons taught in the school in every conceivable subject. But critical race theory comes out of a worldview. It is not in and of itself a worldview. It is a product of a worldview. And that worldview is essentially Marxian, collectivist, with critical race theory, racist. It is anti-individual. That's what I mean by collectivist. They're not really focused on the success of the individual or how individuals act upon each other, but more about how groups interact with other groups. And the idea is that power resides in groups and that those groups are defined not by class in this country, but by race. That's kind of where the critical race piece comes from. The entire thing and all of its offshoots are anti-American. What do I mean anti-American? Well, they go against the American creed. What is the American creed? That individuals are equal under the law, that we all have the same political rights under the law, that we are not born, regardless of our class, regardless of our race, regardless of our sex, regardless of all of these things that are beyond our control, we have equality under the law. And in so doing, and so giving individuals or protecting individual liberty, we have the greatest degree of freedom to pursue our individual happiness, right? And that necessarily results in different outcomes. People are born different. They're born in different environments, and they're also born literally different with different talents and different attributes and different interests and so forth that in combination with the environment will result in their life. Oh, and now add in their effort too, right? So all of these things come together to make the individual life. And the role of government is simply to protect your liberty, to remove artificial barriers, to prevent other people from infringing on your ability to freely choose your own destiny in the United States of America. So the American Creed promises every child born in America, or brought to America for that matter, because we have equality under the law, whether we were born here or not, promises them liberty individually, not as members of groups. And all of these things, critical race theory, critical social justice, equity education, social emotional learning, all of these pedagogies, all of these different ways of teaching in our classroom, or these different premises around learning and how kids acquire knowledge, are anti-American creed because they all focus on a couple of things. The child as a member of a group, the child as some of their parts, their identity parts as defined by external sources, by outside entities, by the state, by groups, and not so much by themselves, but by people who tell them you are this. And also the idea that the state, the community, which is really just another word for, all of us in concert in, government, should tell us how to live, that we can collectively decide the best way to live for everyone. And that somehow individuals are going to achieve more if this, everybody works together as a group to do it, as opposed to just providing the individual with whatever it is they need to then themselves do it. So there is an implicit deflection away from personal responsibility onto the group and the community, and then, of course, the state. And the way this comes to a head in public education really being the most dominant institution we have in America, where the state dictates how we're going to, how we're going to learn, how we're going to think, how we're going to move about for 8 hours a day, how we're going to order our lives for 9 months of the year, and so on. That's public education. We're compelled to be there by law. We're compelled to pay for it by law. It is literally the most socialistic thing about our country, and also by definition, the least American. It really is the least individualistic part of our country is public education. From its inception, the idea that the state, that the government should educate our children in and of itself conflicts with the idea that individuals, and that includes individual families, when you form a family, that's an individual choice that you and your partner made to either reproduce or adopt children and then raise them and be responsible for them. You are literally legally responsible for them, at least for another 5 minutes. And one used to assume it was your responsibility to educate them as well. When the public school system became compulsory, the state assumed that responsibility. That sent a strong message to the population that it is no longer your responsibility to figure out how to do that, where to do that, with whom to do that, or what that is. We will set standards. We will evaluate. We will tell you what to do and where to be and who to trust as experts. And so many generations hence, we have parents who actually believe that is the only way to do it. That's the right way to do it, so to speak, because they really don't know any different. Used to be, for hundreds of years, actually thousands of years in human history, it's not how we did it. Public education is not the norm in human history. Group education, an educational institution, is not the norm in human history, but we take it for granted, and so here we are. And a lot of people have been asking me, well, how do I find it? How do I find this anti-American pedagogy in my school system? Where is it? What is it called? And that's why I said people talk about critical race theory. Well, that's just like one little thing. And that's up at the graduate level and the college level, speaking in academic terms. When it comes into practice in the classroom, it's no longer critical race theory. Now it's praxis. Now it's this idea that groups and identities and all these things are important, and it's going to manifest under many different names. And one of those names is social emotional learning. And you hear about it, you think, oh, that sounds nice. Social emotional learning. What's that all about? And it will be explained to you in terms that make you feel like, okay, that makes sense, because you're not really encouraged to question the experts. These are the experts. This is the state. This is the government. These are the people who certify everything and everyone to teach your kids and tell your kids, you tell you they have to be there. So, you want to trust that, because you don't really have that many choices, do you? Certainly not about where your dollars go. So I dig every day into the states and into what they're doing and how they're hiding it. And even I miss it. I researched my own state, North Carolina, a couple of weeks ago, and I'm color coding them, and I gave it sort of a blue, because the superintendent of public instruction, Catherine Truitt, is a Republican. She says she's opposed to critical race theory, and she's opposed to all this segmenting people into groups and so forth. And so does our lieutenant governor. Most of you who pay attention to this closely have probably seen Mark Robinson speak passionately against the divisiveness of critical race theory. But I submit to you that even they are not aware, even though it's technically their job to be aware, certainly hers, they're not aware of how insidious this is and how pervasive it is. It has spread to the point where it would be like trying to excise a cancer that is no longer a single tumor, but has metastasized to virtually every system of the body and every different kind of organ. And that's what we're looking at here. So I'm going to share my screen with you from now on, and we're going to look at different things just in my state of North Carolina. And I'm going to explain to you how this is anti-American as I've defined it, collectivist, racist, divisive, and most importantly, gets between you, the parent, and your child. Anything that gets between you and your child, anything that assumes a parental role, you should be questioning strongly. You don't need to call it, it doesn't need to be critical race theory. In fact, you could remove the racial component of all of these lessons and they would still be a problem, because it would still be assuming too much of a parental role with your child. So let's take a look at what I'm talking about so that you can better understand it. So this was sent to me in a direct message. This is the North Carolina Association for the Gifted and Talented. So we're having one little tiny subset of education in North Carolina. And this is a non-for-profit organization. So it's technically not affiliated with the Department of Public Instruction, or so you would think, right? It's certainly not an arm of the government. It has nothing to do with it, but it's an organization for gifted and talented. Now, when we scroll down and we look at different things that we can, look at about gifted and talented, what do we find? NCAGT knows Black Lives Matter. Oh, very interesting. Well, I wonder what they have to offer. Let's take a look. So if I click on the click here to download, what comes up is this. Anti-racism and culturally relevant pedagogy resources for educators who want to do more. And when we scroll down through here, we have Teaching Tolerance. Teaching Tolerance is an organization, also a not-for-profit, it is absolutely infused with Black Lives Matter, critical race pedagogy, critical social justice, lots and lots of collectivist stuff. And then we come down to what anti-racist teachers do differently. So now we get into anti-racism, and now we're getting into things like Kendi. All right. Oh, what's this? Wait. What's this? North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. Isn't that interesting? The North Carolina Department of Public Instruction is led by one Catherine Truitt, as I said before, who is a Republican elected official who says she is opposed to critical race theory. And she is like it's its own thing you can put in a box and put away. No, as I said before, it's a world view that infuses all kinds of lesson plans. It is not literally critical race theory. So now we have building student understanding across racial differences, edutopia. These are known purveyors of these kind of critical pedagogy. Oh, how Ibram X. Kendi's definition of anti-racism applies in schools. Can you really say that you're opposed to divisiveness and offer these resources to your educators? Can you really say it's not my fault what the teachers choose to do in their classrooms and what they're bringing into classrooms if you put your department's logo on the bottom of a list of resources? Can you really do that? Culturally responsive classroom, culturally responsive education is another one of those code terms. There are so many terms it would be really difficult to keep them straight. And that's why I'm trying to help parents and taxpayers and other concerned people understand it doesn't matter what you call it. Does it support individualism? Does it support the American creed? Does it support the nuclear family? Does it support a barrier, the one barrier that it should not break down while it's busy breaking down barriers to opportunity is it should not break down the barrier between the family and the school. It is one thing to invite parents to the table as stakeholders and say, this is what we want to teach your kids. What do you think about this? And allow them to have a say and have input. And it is quite another to tell families what they should do to partner with you and what they must do to support their learner. You're not their boss. It's the other way around. You need to bring evidence to bear, and I mean hard scientific evidence, that whatever you're going to teach their children is going to positively impact the academic outcomes. It is not your responsibility to be concerned about their social outcomes, about their emotional outcomes, etc. If there is a problem and it is getting in the way of their ability to function in the classroom or function with their peers, you bring that to the parents and possibly work together offline to figure something out. But it is not your job to go into the classroom and teach all 30 kids at the same time or all 40 kids at the same time how to have perfect mental health. First of all, you can't do that effectively. Second of all, now you're parenting. So this is just, one way through the back door, through this nonprofit organization that has partnered with the Department of Public Instruction. Well, that's through the back door. What about through the front door? Let's take a look, shall we? I just went to the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction and I put in the search box up here, equity. I didn't find anything under students and families, nothing of note. If I were a parent looking, I'd be like, okay, nothing it's really cause for concern, moving right along. I guess Superintendent Truitt is telling the truth. I guess that Mark Robinson is doing everything great and we don't have to worry about this divisive stuff in my school. Then I went over to educators. And apparently the search engine doesn't cross-pollinate. It's siloed. Isn't that interesting? So when you search in educators, you get a completely different view, completely different material. Now we get equity and SEL. Equity, equity. I would really like for Catherine Truitt to explain to us what she means by equity. Because in America, we promise equality under the law. We don't promise equity, least of all of outcomes. And in terms of everyone getting the same, I can see how you might say equity of access to the material, equity of access to experienced and well-trained educators, equity of access to, an equal type of curriculum. So one group of kids is not getting something much worse than another group of kids, least of all by race. If that's how we're talking about it, super. But if we're talking about it in terms of outcomes, we need to have a chat because that's against the American creed. You may not like it, but that's reality. In reality, we are not going to end up in the same place. I will never play basketball in the NBA, nor will most white people, nor will most Black people. You could be in the 99th percentile of Black athletes who play basketball, and you probably won't make it to the NBA because you have to be in the 99.9th percentile because that's how few slots there are relative to people. This is reality. And the sooner we teach our children that reality is you do the best that you can, and we will help you do the best that you can. And we're not judging you against all the other people who look like you and all the other people who come from your same zip code, et cetera, and all the other people who have the same gender or parts that you have. The sooner we teach them that, the better. The sooner they see themselves as individuals responsible for their own lives and their own achievement, the better. That's how their parents treat them. When they go home, their parents aren't comparing them, you would hope, to every other kid in their zip code. Their parents aren't judging them on the basis of how they fare, even hopefully relative to their siblings. We tell parents that's kind of abusive, don't we? When they go, your brother or your sister is doing this well. We don't do that. We look at them and their abilities and their interests and their desires and their hopes and their dreams, and that's what we do. We don't start lumping them into groups and assigning them identities. Well, what does SEL mean? Well, SEL can be a powerful lever for creating caring, just, implication that they're unjust, inclusive, well, by law, they have to be inclusive, and healthy communities. So the school is now in the business of creating a healthy community. I would like to believe that the community is in the business of creating a healthy school. I really don't look to the state to create a healthy community. And healthy communities that support all individuals. No, individuals create healthy communities. Do you see how it's working backwards? Do you see the subtle messaging that how we, the state, through the school, will do these things that will then make your community better, as if they have the power to do that? The only power the state has is force. This is literally the only power. Even with all the education, and even if it's full-blown brainwashing, people are going to walk back into the community individually and do their individual thing. They still have free will. They are not literally zombies or automatons programmed by the state to behave in certain perfect ways so that the community will now be better. If you were to teach each individual to behave as an individual and be responsible within their individual self, guess what? You'd have safe, healthy communities. Because when individuals take care of themselves and they aren't dependent on others to do that for them, and they don't look to others to pick up the pieces of their broken lives, and they don't look to others to make up for their mistakes, or the things that have happened to them, if they have some kind of inner locus of control, you end up with safer, healthier communities. But they're going backwards, okay? And now it says, systemic implementation of SEL fosters and depends on an equitable learning environment where all students and adults feel respected, valued, and affirmed in their individual interests, talents, and social identities, cultural values, and backgrounds. Is it the state's job to affirm anybody's anything? Is it the state's job to affirm your feelings? Is it the state's job to affirm your culture? Affirm is an action, is a positive action. There's nothing passive about it. It is doing something proactively to affirm someone. Is that what you think that your school should do? Is affirm your culture, affirm your social identity? Or do you just want them to get out of your way and not put up barriers against who you are and against your culture? You see, the America that I grew up in was about the government getting out of your way. So removing barriers. When they talk about removing barriers, this isn't what I think of. This is putting up all kinds of different requirements of now, how are we going to evaluate that? You're saying that somebody has to affirm you, that we're going to foster, and that this now depends on this? that the education of your child depends on this, how are we going to evaluate whether it happened? Round up 30 people, they will have 30 different evaluation, criteria, sets of criteria of how they felt. Did they feel affirmed? And what if they didn't? What are you going to do? What if you had 30 people, 15 of them didn't feel properly affirmed by their definition? Are you going to tell them their definition is wrong? This is like trying to nail Jell-O to the wall. The state has no business doing this, much less advocating for it. While SEL alone will not solve longstanding and deep-seated inequities, it's not whether it will not alone, it will not, period. It cannot, period. Well, it says in the education system, it can help states, districts, and schools promote understanding, examine biases. This presumption is that we have biases that are negative. All biases are negative. Did it ever occur to anyone that some of the biases we develop that's what experience is? Experience and learning from mistakes and from past, time in the classroom, if you're a teacher, results in biases. Some of them may be good, some of them may be bad, some of them may be neutral, but to say that we're going to, examine them all as if we're looking for the bad ones, that we're presuming the bad ones. First of all, it takes a lot of time and a lot of money, and you're going at it the wrong way. Why don't you identify areas where you've had, repeated problems that you can legitimately tie to someone's bias? We used to be able to know what that it was, right? You'd see someone's attitude, you'd see their behavior, and you'd say, there's a bias operating there, and pull those people aside and deal with it. But if you go at it, assuming that everybody's carrying around these biases, you're going to spend a lot of time and a lot of money looking for something. And because people are paid for that, they're going to find it. They're going to find it. And I submit to you that you're going to find a lot of things that cause people to be hypersensitive, hyper self-reflective, neurotic. That's neurosis. Okay. Reflect on and address the impact of racism and other isms. Are we going to reflect on the impact of statism on the family, on the community, on education? I doubt it, because that's an ism too. Let's see. Build cross-cultural relationships. Don't we do that anyway? I mean, again, you're sort of highlighting differences and then talking how you're going to build these relationships as if people aren't already doing that in 2021. This notion that we're living these parallel, separate lives in our state is just not borne out by evidence. And then, create more inclusive school communities. Your school is not a community, it's a network. Your community is a community. And the government, what I've seen, is trying to center everything around the school, empower the school more and more and more, which now will make it a black hole for money, power, etc. And your kid is your link to it. So now that means you're going to be sucked into it as well. And how long will it be before your parenting, your home life, your beliefs, your values, your ideology, etc., are going to be judged, and you're going to be tasked with examining things, and you're going to be blamed for your child's negative outcomes because they've done these things? How much do you want the fingers of the state in your personal pie? All right. So this is SEL. And they go on to explain what it is. It says, an integral part of education and human development, SEL is the process through which all young people and adults acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities, manage emotions, and achieve personal and collective goals. First of all, how do individuals have collective goals? And show empathy for others, establish and maintain supportive relationships, and make responsible and caring decisions. That all sounds like parenting. What is the role of the parent if SEL is going to do that? Your child goes into school at 7 if they go to kindergarten, right? 6 or 7. Have you not already been working on this project? Have you not already, as a parent, been working on or should you not have already been working on this project with your kids, right? How to acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop a healthy identity? Why is that the school's job? Why is it the state's job? Why is it the government's job? be responsible, caring people? Is that what you want your these people you don't know? You don't know them from a hole in the wall, and you have precious little access to them individually. You don't know what their background is. You don't know how well trained they are in psychology and sociology and social work and all the different things that they would need to be absolute experts at. And that's presupposing they are perfectly healthy individuals themselves and are not projecting any mental baggage onto your kid, not trying to parent your kid or you for that matter. This is intrusive in the extreme, but instead they say, oh, yeah, it sounds good. They're going to teach my kid to be an empathetic person. Isn't that your job? Isn't that your job? At most, the school should reinforce what you're already doing by setting very clear rules about how to behave at school, where people who have good decision-making capabilities, are empathetic, are supportive, are inclusive, will do just fine without any intervention of the state. They're going to just cruise along. Now, the kids who don't have that might have some difficulties. They should have somebody should go back to the parents and start talking to the parents, and you can deal with that offline. But to bring this into the classroom and say, we need to do the same for all the students, is like treating all the parents like they have failed, like they're not actually doing their job, because this is a parent's job. Everything I just read there is, I would assume, to be my job. In fact, I don't want the school doing it because I have certain ideas about how to go about doing that. And I have a sneaking suspicion that the school and the teachers do not share my views on that. And one of them, again, is supporting individualism. There's a lot of room in there to support group identity. There's a lot of room in there to be divisive and say that you're being empathetic means that you are going to label yourself and respect pronouns and, be all kinds of other things that maybe your parents wouldn't have included in that conversation, but you still would have been an upstanding citizen in that school. You wouldn't have ruffled anybody's feathers. You wouldn't have been mean. You wouldn't have bullied anybody. You would just go on about your business, get your education, make some friends, and be done. They're going way too far. This is North Carolina, Department of Public Instruction. But no, this is so necessary. Why? Why is it so necessary? Look how intrusive this is. Social and emotional learning, self-awareness. I mean, I said, classroom, schools, homes, and communities. They're saying this emanates out from the school. I beg to differ. This comes in from the community. How parents raise their children, how those children are taught to behave, how they then come into the classroom and behave within the classroom, and then how the teachers merely support the ground rules of the society, which I used to believe were set forth in, the Constitution, the Golden Rule, the basics, right? The public values we all have. Supporting things like viewpoint diversity, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of association. No, you don't have to share your toys and you don't have to be friends with everyone. Just don't be rude and nasty. It used to be that way. Now they want to go the other way, from the center outward. How that people don't see that as indoctrination and statism, I do not know. Because to me, there it is in living color. This is a diagram of the state defining what the culture will be, what the community will be, how your home will function. That your child is going to come home to you and possibly tell you, Mom, you're not very empathetic and you don't really do this right and that right and the other thing right, because my teacher told me that in order to be inclusive, we need to do this and that and the other. Do you really want to get a lecture about how to behave as a conscientious adult from your teenager? It's one thing to have a conversation with them about things if they don't like something you're doing. It's quite another for them to come out of the school saying, this is the right way to be. My teacher told me so. My lessons told me so. This is what the video I watched told me to do. That's indoctrination. And that's the difference. So this is how insidious it is. We have a nonprofit that has a document that is stamped with the approval of the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. We go back out and we look at the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. We find SEL. We see the diagram. We say, oh, look at that, right? And then let's take a gander over at the theory of action that I can link to. If I go off of here, see, here it is, Castle State Education Agency Theory of Action. They paid for this. This wasn't free. This group, Castle, makes money. You pay them. They are a company. They have a CEO. Okay. So I click over to that and I get, oh wait, where is it? Where is the state theory of action? Here it is. Systemic social and emotional learning for states. They sell this to multiple states. Your state might be using this, in fact. Okay. So then we go down here, strengthen adult SEL competencies and capacities. They're going to go with the teachers, and I guarantee you it's going to be out into the parents as well. Then we go down to connects SEL and equity. And equity, as we now know, is one of those fun little code words for all of the critical race stuff that's going on about racial identities and equal outcomes and so on. Oh, systemic SEL, systemic approaches, right? By the way, they have a lot of videos that are, in webinars and things that are linked to where, people can go and learn about this, and the teachers go and watch. And I've watched some of them. And sure enough, it's all full of the pronouns and my identities, and they list it all under the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. Yeah, wonder if they know it's even there. And so here we have, transformative social and emotional learning, SEL, service of educational equity and excellence. They all look so official, don't they? These experts, they know what they're doing. And yet nowhere that I looked, see, here's one of these little frameworks, Castle Cares Initiative. Look who funds it. Oh, look, Chan Zuckerberg, married to Mark Zuckerberg, Bill and Melinda Gates. Have you noticed how Bill and Melinda Gates are connected to just about all of this stuff eventually? You can go looking and there's their names. Yeah, there they are. And then we get back to the same thing. It's the way. It is the way. It's an integral part of how they do it. It is the process through which young people acquire this. These words are chosen intentionally, guys. These words are chosen intentionally. It's not an accident that they chose the as opposed to a. Where are the parents? What role do parents play? If it is the way, you could take your kid and send them off to school at 2 or 3. Universal preschool. Anyway, I digress. You could send them off to school at 2 or 3, and they'll take care of it. They'll give them the way that they'll acquire all of these healthy identities, manage their emotions, become self-aware, all that. Yeah, the school will do it for you. You don't have to parent, right? Okay. It advances educational equity and excellence through authentic school, family, community partnerships. Are they really authentic if they're forced? Are they really authentic if you're made to believe that you really don't have another choice, and if you fight this, you're a racist? You're a racist, you're a reactionary, you're an extremist, and all these things. You just really don't want inclusion, do you? And then we get decades of research studies demonstrate the following benefits. Do they now? Improvement in students' social and emotional skills. Have you noticed that? Have you noticed kids doing better with their social and emotional skills? Or have you noticed an off-the-charts rise in anxiety, neurosis, and mental illness among teenagers in particular? Not just because of the pandemic, but pre-pandemic, because I've noticed that. Have you noticed people wanting to change their very identity and mutilate their bodies? Cutting, drug addiction, anorexia, bullying. Yeah, I don't think I've seen an improvement in students' social and emotional skills across all of the decades that they're talking about. The decline in students' anxiety and behavior problems? Really? Really? I would love to see this research. Long-term improvements in their skills, attitudes, pro-social behavior. I think what they mean is pro-social justice behavior and academic performance. I'm not seeing that either. Are you guys seeing that? Are you seeing an improvement in academic performance, or are you just seeing them dumb things down and lower the standards? So the precipitous drop in literacy won't be quite as noticeable. We'll just blend it in and go by race. So we won't notice the high flyers across the board. They'll all just bring up the averages of each group. And then guess what? We get to cry racism. Wise financial investment. Ooh, cost benefit research. If by that you mean we will continue to create giant sinkhole problems into which taxpayers will be encouraged to pour their hard-earned money, yeah, I guess it's a wise investment for the state, if that's your goal. So, that's their bias. What's that? What else? Oh, look, we have an audit. This is an audit to support anti-racist practices, SEL and anti-racist practices. Deedly-dee. They're not separate. You guys, they're like, oh no, we do SEL. We don't do critical race theory. I'm sorry. Yes, you do. So let's take a look at the common belief survey, shall we? All right, so we have this thing. It says how to do it. This be reflection before the practice. And then we have the common belief survey. Where is that lovely survey? Going to find it. Here it is. I don't think of my students in terms of their race or ethnicity. I'm colorblind when it comes to my teaching. And then they ask them to, talk about this. We have to talk about it. The gap in the achievement among students of different races is about poverty, not race. By the way, there's a mountain of evidence to support that it is because of poverty. But they're like, we're going to treat that as a bias that's negative and wrong. And I'll show you how they do that in just a second. Teachers should adapt their teaching to the distinctive cultures of African American, Latino, Asian, and Native American students. I'm sure you know what their bias is there. We should adapt the teaching because, different kids learn differently based on their race, based on their ethnicity. There's some truth to it if we're talking language blocks. There's some truth to it if we're talking about little bitty kids and, maybe feeling like they want to see, themselves in the books. That's why we use animal pictures and not people pictures, by the way. But okay. So they're calling on the teachers. They're creating the sense in teachers that like, oh no, I do things wrong. Oh no. When students come from homes where educational achievement is not a high priority, they often don't do their homework and their parents don't come to school events. This lack of parental support undermines my efforts to teach these students. Oh, heaven forfend, we believe that. That would be wrong. That would just be terribly, terribly intolerant of us to believe the obvious. Okay? And so on. And then let's go to how they evaluate it. Because they're not going to let you just discuss this. They have answers. They have answers for you because of course they do. So questions to consider. And then they tell you, they say, studies of the influences on student achievement invariably show that students' family income is a significant correlate of low achievement. However, when students' socioeconomic status is taken into account, race often accounts for variance in student performance. But there are other variables they're not going to discuss. They're not going to discuss the other important variables and why that is. No, we can't do that. So you see how this all works? This is Teaching Tolerance, a project of the Southern Poverty Law Center, who, by the way, coincidentally thinks that Charles Murray, one of the most important social scientists of our century, is a terrible, terrible racist, very bad person. So we can't consider the variables of social science that he researches. No, that's bad. We have to go with only these, only race, only poverty, but poverty because race, not because of any other factor. So this is how it works. And if you're thinking I'm still a little bit uptight and why do I care so much about this? Let's just look at how this impacts one teacher's brain. Just one teacher. I grant you, it's one of many millions. But let's take a look. Social emotional learning is not just for kids. Guys, maybe I'm crazy, but when I read this, I thought to myself, this woman has no business being in a classroom. She talks about, I'd never forget the day when a red rubber bracelet was my most important accessory. After beginning our regular morning routine, I was confronted by an angry colleague in my classroom. We started to engage in a heated conversation right in front of my students. Okay, why? Why right in front of your students? Why did you not at that point, grown adult, say, let's step out onto the hallway? Why did you not invite your colleague into the hallway? We started to engage in a heated conversation. Okay, we got that. I knew this was bad. But you did it anyway? I knew my students were watching and I knew I had to get my social emotional house in order fast. How about your butt in order and get out in the hallway? After a couple of minutes, we ended the conversation, but the issues were unresolved. When I shut the door, I didn't go back to the morning meeting. I couldn't, not the way my emotions were at the moment. I literally could not teach. So I walked over to a small basket that holds red, green, and yellow rubber bracelets. We all put one on every morning to show how we are feeling without words. Do you want your student doing that? Do you want your kid going into, does your kid want to do this? Do they want to go into class and put on a colored bracelet? They go, I'm feeling sad today. I submit to you, they shouldn't want that. Maybe they do now because they've been brainwashed into believing that we should wear our emotions like on our sleeves and be constantly showing everyone how we feel all the time. Don't go by me. I do that, but I'm a grown adult and I'm on video. So I'm doing it for effect. But I can assure you that I wouldn't go into a classroom and be like, I need a bracelet. That is not great role modeling, guys. And telling a bunch of students that they should wear their emotions on their sleeve in a setting like school is probably not a good idea. That's how we drop our boundaries. That is not healthy boundary maintenance. And then she says, I simply told my students I needed to cool down, then went over to our breathing bucket or cool down area and breathed deeply for several minutes while they continued. So the students are doing whatever they're doing. The grown ass woman is over there in a breathing bucket, whatever that is, for several minutes. She's not instructing. She's not supervising. She's not mentoring. She's not doing anything that an adult should be doing. She is projecting her emotions into the energy of that classroom. And we're supposed to believe that this is a good thing. I was then able to return to my students and my job in a much more productive emotional state. I modeled exactly what I would want them to do in the same situation. Really? There were no other options? Maybe taking your adult colleague out into the hall and not bringing your adult issues into the classroom, maybe that would be good to model. Maybe teaching them that, our emotions go in one place, and then when it's time to work, we turn that face off. If we stop doing that, are people going to go to work out in the real world and be like, boss, I need a bracelet. I can't work right now because I don't have my bracelet. I need my red bracelet. Where's my breathing bucket? I can't come to the meeting. I know the client is waiting, but I can't. I need my timeout. This is what you want your students to do? No, I'm sorry. And I'm sorry, you could go back 20 years and emotions weren't much different. Teenagers weren't that much different. The world was actually more dangerous, not less. All the things we act like are so much more dangerous, so much more stressful, so much harder, were actually worse in the past, statistically. And now they're acting like, oh my God, we need a breathing bucket. Social emotional learning it's everywhere in education today. It's widely discussed, debated, and embraced in different ways with lots of emotion, no pun intended, and rightly so. In my opinion, social emotional learning is the key to academic achievement. I beg to differ. By all means, please tell me if you think I'm crazy. But if your teacher were doing this to your kid, would you not be like, lady, you need some therapy, like in a hurry? Because let's back up. Let's go back into the home. If a mom is fighting with a friend of hers, with her spouse, or a dad with his spouse, whatever, is this how you want them to react around children? Is this how we model managing our emotions with children? That's how we do it now? This is maturity? I don't think so. So what is SEL exactly? And of course, she's well primed to show everybody and could take this out and proselytize to the rest of the world. That's the beauty of all of these critical social justice thingies, these pedagogies, is they do something that, proselytizing faiths do. They take the people they teach and they encourage them to go make more people who think like you. And that's one thing if it's an adult, but they're going to the classroom and they're teaching your impressionable child, this is how to manage your emotions. So when your kid comes home and has a meltdown and demands that you give them their space and their time to have a meltdown all over the house, and you need to understand, and that's acceptable. And you doing anything different is, you're abusing me. You're telling me I need to calm down and you're abusing me because you're not validating my emotions right now. You can't even parent. That's not abuse. It's not abuse to tell your kid to take a breath and no, they don't get to vent their spleen all over the house, all over their siblings, all over everybody else. They don't get to shut down and not participate. That is not, when you're 3, that's fine. That's developmentally appropriate. But when you're 13, 14, 15, 16, no, it's not. You need to go have a timeout in your room. And when you can calm down, you can come out. When you can speak respectfully, you can do that. But this woman is abandoning her responsibility by saying, I just need time. I gotta go over here. I breathe into the bucket. To me, it's bizarre. I don't think this is how we teach kids how to do anything. And like I said, I don't think this is the state's job. But this is where it hides. Okay? All the things. I would love to rattle them all off to you, but we have, equity education, culturally responsive learning, social emotional learning, what else do we have? Anti-racism, social justice, all of it. But I find this to be one of the most insidious things, because this is really the thing that opens the door to the teacher having the authority to get inside your kid's head. This is where they get away with saying, you're an oppressor. It's really, you need to come to terms with that. And you need to deal with the emotions, question your biases. That's your white fragility talking. I'm sorry, we've renamed that. It's now white rage. Whatever it is, do you want a timeout to go? Would you like a bracelet? Because we need to talk about how you need to deal with your whiteness. We need to decenter that. And then you will be able to make appropriate decisions and be an empathetic person, because that's the way to do it. When in fact, no, it's not the way to do it. You don't need to separate yourself from yourself to become an empathetic person. In fact, quite the opposite is true. You cannot feel real empathy unless you have a very solid sense of your own identity. And if people are coming at you, chipping away at that and telling you that, first of all, that you have an identity you didn't choose and you're stuck with it. And now you have to take it apart and decenter it and fracture it and, make it all, deal with your fragility and all this other stuff. And now you're empathetic? No, you're not. Now you're an anxious, neurotic mess. Empathy comes from a position of self-esteem, because only a person who's properly boundaried can allow themselves to feel what someone else feels. Why is that? Because empathy requires you to access something inside your own mind that's painful, and be able to deal with that without coming undone. That's how you feel other people's feelings. You say, like, can I relate? Can I empathize? Have I ever been in a similar situation? That means I got to access a memory, access a time, access something in my imagination that is not comfortable. And I got to be okay hanging out there for a little while. Then I can show empathy to another person. Otherwise, it's sympathy. That's empathy. But how does a neurotic mess who's like busy figuring out how to not hate themselves feel empathy? They can't. They're too busy trying to take care of themselves and their own emotions. That's not empathy. That's kind of like, trauma bonding. So what you think what's being described to you as empathy is really just they're forming trauma bonds with their peers who look like them, who share certain socioeconomic or demographic characteristics with them. And trauma bonds are unhealthy. They are unhealthy. We don't want to trauma bond to people. We want to bond to people productively, constructively, from a position of mental health and self-esteem. This is encouraging cognitive distortion, trauma bonding, codependence, and identity destruction, not formation. But they wrap it up in a nice little set of words, and we all think it's great. But that's where it hides. And that's the anti-Americanism I'm talking about in the pedagogy. It is against individualism. Anything that tears down the individual to build you back up as a member of a group is anti-American. And yes, it is narcissism. So I'm going to quickly look at what you guys have said while I've been rambling away here. Let's take a look. It says, any idea when we'll have a better sense of parents' homeschool plans for the fall or their deadlines for enrollment? Would be good to know how many parents are waking up. No, you can homeschool your child at any time. You can pull them out mid-year. You can pull them out any day of the week. You can go right now and check your state's Department of, it'll have a different name, but go to the Department of Public Instruction or Department of Ed in your state and just put in the search homeschooling, and they will tell you what you need to do it. It's different from state to state, but you can do it at any time. You just want to make sure to let them know you can't just not show up for school. You may have to unenroll. You may have to signal your intent. There are different things you have to do, but that's up to you. It's not illegal in any state. They're just different hoops you have to jump through. Let's see. Can you even teach this? The schools are reflections of the community, like you're saying. Exactly correct. The idea that you're going to get that teachers are perfect, like that somehow these people who went to college and took a bunch of classes and who knows what are the correct people to effectively parent your children, as if they don't have any of their own neuroses, they don't have any of their own problems, they don't have any of their own anxieties. They're perfectly empathetic and wonderful human beings that you would leave your child alone with and go on vacation. Because that's what it is. I mean, they're telling you, like, we're perfectly capable of holding your child's emotional and psychological well-being in our hands. Come on, let us do it. You don't have to do it. We'll do it. If you believe that, then I've got a bridge to sell you. Let's see. In Montessori preschool, my children were not coerced into sharing. They were really good about personal boundaries. That is so good. That is so important, because especially in a culture where still, and I don't think it's culture, I think it's largely biology, but where you have, male and female differences that will always be there, contrary to popular myth. If you start early with this whole breaking down of boundaries, females react differently than males to this. The threat feeling that a biological female feels tends to go inward. They tend to turn that fear and anxiety on themselves. They tend to give too much, or they tend to get exploitative because they're afraid. So it can go, they can put things on themselves and punish themselves, or they can become exploitative to their friends and be very transactional, but it's all from a place of fear, and it's a little bit passive. Boys, on the other hand, can turn it outward in a more aggressive manner. But what you're doing is you are attacking the new little selves idea of, like, where do I end and others begin, when you come in from the outside world, a total stranger, a teacher, and be like, let's work on your psyche. No, they shouldn't be doing that. It's a mess. And telling someone to share when it's not their natural inclination to share is crossing a boundary. It's tearing a boundary down by force. There are reasons they don't want to share. You need to incentivize people to want to share if that's your value. And I'm not even 100% sure it should be. It's important for kids to make a decision that it is mutually beneficial for them to share. That's also part of the American creed, by the way. We don't force people to do things here. My kids came home on Earth Day talking about how they needed to save the earth, and I told them we don't worship Gaia in our house. Yeah, burdening children with too much socially, as far as the health of the community, the planet, even their family, even if they come home saying, we learned today that eating this kind of food is really, really bad and you need to stop, mom and dad. And No. They may not be wrong, but that's not the child's job. Even in 12th grade, you don't deputize the children to go back into the community and change things. That's not how the state is supposed to operate. That's literally indoctrination. You want to have a healthy community. Like I said, teach the kids the core skills so they are never dependent on anyone else in the community. The community will thank you for it. And they likely will become well-rounded, decent human beings. Because the one thing about learning, when you read well and you have good comprehension and a great vocabulary and you learn how to think, not what to think, and you can do math well enough to understand that correlation is not causation and all kinds of things, is you're a lot harder to push around and manipulate. And when you're a lot harder to push around and manipulate, you make a healthier community, in my personal opinion, one that allows for more individual freedom, more liberty, more, believe it or not, equality of outcomes, at least, reasonable equality that falls along the lines of what people, you get what you put in and what you have some kind of a right to, than if you impose. Then you get some really yucky stuff. And we've seen it. History tells the tale. So let's see what else. Yes, Gates is connected to Common Core too. And Common Core is connected to all of this. We paid extra for this. How are adult people buying this SELBS they're selling? Because they don't know about it, Christy. They don't know about it. The whole purpose of this channel is to shine a light. I'm like, hey, look at this, guys. Look at this. And people will initially, when they come to my channel, they're like, okay, so what? What's the problem? And that's why I get so granular with the word choice and I explain to you how it's intentional. And the proof is in the pudding. Look around. Are academic results what we want them to be? No, they're going like this. Did we have riots and protests in the streets full of angry teenagers and young adults who genuinely believe that the world is worse than it's ever been? Who genuinely believe it's their job to change the world, and starting with the Constitution of the United States and tearing down every institution that we have? Did you get the feeling listening to them they're talking about a different country? When they come home and they argue with you and bicker with you and tell you you're a terrible, no good, very bad person, and you're like, who the heck are you and what happened to my little child? It does matter. Okay, I'm not insane. These things matter. And over time, every year in a class with teachers who believe this stuff, and this is their worldview, and they believe they're activists, and it is their job to teach your child to be an activist, to go out and be an agent for social change, and that takes precedence over basic skills. Don't doubt me. They believe that. They believe that changing the world, changing the country for social justice is literally more important than reading, writing, math, and science. They absolutely do. They absolutely do. One of these days, I'll find enough evidence to come and show you in one place where it is, but I come across it it's spotty and I keep forgetting to gather it in one place, but I'll work on that because they absolutely do. 100%. How old is that teacher? That's a really good question. I don't know. Well, that's the other one. How old is the teacher? She looks like maybe 30s, young 30s, high 20s. I don't know, but young. Okay, really young. People's obsession with money and power, coupled with years of our unfortunate laziness, while this stuff has manifested, have led us here. I'm just glad you inform us because this is pure insanity. Now, that's really an interesting point that you make, Reagan. I hope I'm saying your name right. Obsession with money and power, definitely power. I would say yes to money in this respect. We've become very materialistic, and I don't use the term materialism the same way some other people do. Some people think of materialism in terms of stuff and gathering things and buying things and owning things. Yes, it is that to a degree, but I see that as a manifestation of materialism philosophically. And by that, I mean that your sense of achievement, your sense of purpose in life, your sense of meaning in life is external. It manifests in your action on the world as opposed to something inside. It doesn't need to be religious. It doesn't even need to be spiritual. It could be philosophical. But if you can't derive meaning out of something as simple as a job well done, whatever you're doing, I don't know, baking a cake. I mean, it could be making your bed, cleaning your house, planting a garden, caring for a child, having a relationship, walking your dog. I mean, if you can't find meaning in the simple day-to-day activities of your life and in just being a good person and making good decisions in your small way, if you need to go out and act upon the world, and that manifests in two ways. One, activism, obviously, and the other is acquisition of stuff. Money, power, buying things, bigger car, bigger house, fancier this, fancier that. Look at how many followers I have on Instagram, okay? You're just externalizing, you're outsourcing your value. And that is a big problem. So I agree that we have done that over the past probably 100 years, if I'm really going to be honest, but certainly the last 50. Since the Second World War, there has been a focus on the external world and prosperity measured in things and stuff and power, as opposed to just contentment, happiness, good relationships, all those kinds of things, which of course has been exacerbated by mass market advertising and social media and all of these things. And we can go on all day about the myriad causes of it, but we can only become aware of it and fight it individually. The state's certainly not going to fight for us because it depends on it. It depends on a consumer-based economy. It depends on us being willing to spend gobs of money on our institutions and pay taxes and all of these kinds of things. It depends on us being insecure is what it depends on. Because they only have the kind of progressive purpose of giving us things and providing us with stuff as opposed to just protecting our rights if we're in a constant state of fear or need. So to that extent, yes, I 100% agree. It has been externally focused. The teachers and people who know what critical theory is usually come unglued and forced to defend it. Yes, they do. And I would say it's a combination of those who know exactly what it is and don't want you to find out because they have malicious intent. They don't think it's malicious, but we know it is. And then you have those who simply are too ignorant to speak about it, and they know they're too ignorant to speak about it. They've been brainwashed, and it's like trying to argue with someone who's in a cult. They're not really knowledgeable about why they believe what they believe, but it's such a crucial component of their personal identity that you asking them questions is an existential threat to their being. They're like, it's like you're attacking who they are as a person. So they don't have a sense of confidence in their own values and beliefs. I'm going to start at the beginning. Yes, good idea. Okay. And then we have, I want to start my own core skills school. Please do. I encourage anybody and everybody in a community to find people like you, come together, find out who can teach core skills, who wants to start a co-op, who wants to start a micro school. Do whatever you can, think outside the box, but take your kid back. You can't take this back. There is no way I, as a North Carolina parent, can take back the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. I can't even reach the people in this office to get them to look at this and answer for it. I can't. You've got a Republican sitting there as superintendent of public instruction who either is ignorant that that's what this means, is not sure she wants to defend the American creed quite so explicitly because it's, sadly, tragically become this political football of, oh, no, I can't defend individual liberty anymore because they've turned that into a racist white supremacist concept. Well, someone's got to do it. And if the Republicans aren't going to do it, then who else? We got the libertarians, if we're talking politics and legislative solutions, and I just say a pox on everybody's house. There's no legislative solution to this, guys. Individuals have to take back individual liberty. Only we can do it. One kid at a time. One kid at a time. Hey, Sour Kiwi, you're late to the beginning, but this will be stored so you can go back and watch it. I want a classical education school like Seven Oaks School in Indiana. It's a Barney charter school. I wonder what Deb thinks about that one in particular. I don't know anything about that one in particular, but I can tell you as far as classical education, there are numerous online resources for that. For example, you can check out Well-Trained Mind Academy, I believe is online. That's pretty much a classical education. You can find classical conversations generally in your community. I would check Facebook. I would even just Google it, classical conversations for your local town or your local region, see what you find, and you will probably find classical education for your kids. And if you don't find it, start one. Look up classical conversations or classical education and create your own group. People do it all the time. And it's just lack of awareness, you guys. And one of the things I want you to know is that I do this here on YouTube, and I sort of put these things out for you to kind of find it and get to know me and get to know my approach. But I do have a locals community. I would love to contribute to it more. I would love to be on there all day long, just putting content in. But I do have 2 Zoom calls a week, and we can talk about these issues. I address questions. There's also, for my supporters over there, I have a little research feed where you can type in a question and have me go search for it for you. As long as it's something I could do in like 15 minutes, and I'm probably faster at it than you are, I'll give it a shot. If I can't, I'll let you know. But I try to get this out because 90% of the problem is lack of awareness. People who are trying to address this for their own children went through the same system. This is what they know. This is all they know. And they don't know where to look for it. And it's been obfuscated and hidden and so forth. And it's kind of like, where do I even start? Okay. So that much I can help you with. I can give you step by step. So let's see what's down here. Watch out for the well-trained mind forum, though. They're all woke. Oh, no. Yeah, you have to watch out for forums. Forums have a tendency to be taken over by people with political ideology, but you can do well-trained mind all by yourself. So even if you don't want to join the academy, and I'd be surprised if their online academy instructors are woke. I would be surprised, but forums get filled with all kinds of wackadoodle stuff. So yes, you're absolutely right. Same with the homeschool community. You have to look in the homeschool co-ops and homeschool groups for what their mission is, what their sort of ethos is. You can read through some of the comments, and even the 14,000 plus person North Carolina homeschooling community has a sizable chunk of woke people in it who went absolutely ballistic when I posted a 1776 Unites based curriculum in there, and they wanted to take it down because according to them, I didn't have the right to teach wrong things. Well, they're mistaken. So don't back down to people like that. You're homeschooling or you're doing your own individual thing for a reason. So you can avoid those people. But the bad news is if you are in the school, you can't. You're at their mercy. Even if every single parent in the class was opposed to what they're doing, there's very little you can do to stop it because the teachers are bringing it in and you don't get to choose the teachers. You just don't. And even if there's a sympathetic teacher, somebody who comes privately and says to you, Psst, I agree with you. I don't like this. I don't want to teach you either, but I don't really have a choice. Da, 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 da. They have to they're whispering for a reason. They're going to lose their job. They're going to be marginalized. They're going to be finger wagged. They're going to be possibly fired. So, it's almost impossible at this point to avoid within the system. Taking back the schools implies you ever had them. And I would say you didn't have them. This has been going on for, well, at least since Obama. I would go back even farther if we're talking critical social justice. But social justice has been in the curriculum for 30 plus years. It's just by different names. This is the worldview of people who are in education in America. So the only way to prevent that worldview from indoctrinating your child and becoming your child's worldview is to get them away from these people. You can't get rid of the people, though. Let's see. Classical conversations seem Christian-oriented. Yes, that is true. So yes. And so classical conversations is Christian-oriented. If you want a more secular thing, you can look for classical education model or methodology in homeschooling, and that's a separate thing you can look up. There is an online school called Lukian.org. They teach classics, literally. They also teach literature and so forth. This is at the middle and high school level. You still have to get your math other places, but I know of resources for that as well that are unwoke. My kids go to an unwoke one-stop shop academy called Williamsburg Academy. It's an online academy based in Utah, and they are unwoke. They just are. So they even say, because I've checked with them each year, I'm like, are you guys going to stay this way? And they're like, we have a little quiz for people who come to our website. And if this isn't for you, it's not for you. We don't aim to please everybody. So they're not looking to please the woke ideology. They present a non-secular, non-ideological education. So if you're looking for that and you want sort of a one-stop shop for middle school and high school, you can look at that as well. Anyway, so been blabbing on for about an hour. I really thank those of you who came to watch. I hope you will take this to heart and go back to your own states and do this kind of search. As I said, you're going to want to go to your Department of Public Instruction or your Department of Education or your Board of Education, whatever it's called in your state. And you're going to want to type in equity. And don't forget to go to the educator or teacher side. And if you come up against this is protected by login, That should be a giant red flag. Some states are doing that now where they're not even allowing the public to look at their resources for teachers. But as I said, this right here, anti-racism and culturally relevant pedagogy with the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction is a question that deserves to be answered. So if anybody has the ear of our superintendent, Catherine Truitt, or Mark Robinson, our lieutenant governor, who professes to be very concerned about these things coming into the classroom, I encourage you to share this with them. Send it to them. I will be. But the more people that share it with them, maybe the more closely they'll take a look at this and whether they think this supports the American creed or not. It's not about whether it's critical race theory. It's totally irrelevant. It is like just a name. It's just a name. It's about, does this or does this not support what we stand for as Americans? And as public servants, is this our job or is it not our job? Are we getting in the way of parenting? I submit that they are. So thank you all for coming. For those of you who are around at 3:00 today, I will be on again live with Christopher Paisley from, he's got a YouTube channel that is Inside White Fragility, and he wrote the book Exploring White Fragility, but he will be here to talk to me about, or we'll be talking with each other about the trouble with white identity. Okay. So I hope to see you then, and have a great afternoon.